Hey, it's Pavel. While extending the application with MySQL support, I have altered the database helper and storage provider modules with some better support for multiple types, and I have decided to share a bit about what I have done to that piece of code. So, starting with a database helper. As for now, we have just a simple way to get an instance of a database client, which is that helper file. We have that instance, which takes some parameters from provider itself. We pass the expected provider for which we want to get an instance by input argument in this function. And this provider basically is a type which is mapped to a string. So we get a name like Postgres or MySQL, and then depending on which provider do we have, we build a client structure on this particular type. This type holds two things basically, which is a driver and a connection string, which are basically, as for now, the only things that differ between various supported instances. And we insert these items into the open connection tool, which lets us use much less code than before that. And also to actually get an instance, as you have probably noticed that that instance is a small letter 1. So it's not exported outside of this package in row. We have the wrapper function that dbclient, which lets us take the actual type of the DB connection matching our configuration. This that provider type is a simple function that matches environment variable defined for a storage provider to one of supported types of database. And the actual database client for given Postgres in this case holds just these two methods or functions, which is a driver returning just a string and a connection string, which also is just a formatted string with all the environment variables that we might need for it, and some default values if we don't want to fill everything there. That would make it, it's, as for my opinion, quite nicer than before, as we use far less code to do exactly the same, and it's all very reusable. So adding another database like Oracle or something would require only defining this file with connection string and driver, and very basic mapping for it. As for a storage provider, I have also added some basic type for it. So we built a provider with let's name it a constructor function. So I have defined some default provider that holds query strings for each of our traces, and it has the basic functions that we use to get some data from somewhere, from one of our defined providers, which are implemented as before, no change here. And to actually use it with a database defined for in our configuration, we have a type provider as before, but instead of defining other methods here, we only embed that shared default provider. In Go, this mechanism allows us to use all the functions from that embed item functions field, anything from that item inside our new structure. So the only function that I actually need to implement for this provider is ret type to return the matching one, and in a constructor function, also in Golang, constructor is supposed to return a pointer to the type that we are implemented it for. And for this case, I just returned the followed pointer to a provider which embeds default provider, and here I assign the right queries for each of these items. That's quite all. It's simple as well, as we don't repeat even these function definitions. We only need to assign the right SQLs, which also, in case of adding another provider for this case, we only need to define it here, add another trace to this switch, and implement such a constructor and make the SQL queries matching the actual trace. So thank you for attention in this short one. Welcome to the next videos as well.